Blizzard has just announced a new format for Contenders in 2020, promising to add more games to each season, give teams more opportunities to play against high-level competition, and set a higher standard for team development. The 2020 season of Contenders looks to be focusing on the growth of both players and organizations as a whole. However, the new changes can be a little bit difficult to understand, so we're going to go through them slowly and see what it means for the Overwatch League. This is the new Contenders. Starting off, the old system of 7 regions, North America, South America, Europe, China, Korea, Pacific, and Australia, will still remain. In each region, all 8 of the Contenders teams from the 2019 Contenders Season 2 will be invited to play in a double elimination tournament which will decide seeding into the new system. The top 4 teams from this tournament will automatically get put into their region's quarterfinals as seeds 1 through 4, while the bottom 4 teams will be placed in the Contenders Trials tournament as seeds 1 through 4. Next, the Open Division will take place as usual, which is open to any players of all skill levels, except of course those teams which have already been placed in either Contenders or Contenders Trials. The Open Division will use a Swiss system, as with previous iterations, and the top 8 teams will participate in Contenders Trials after around 7 weeks of playing. These 7 weeks include 6 weeks of Swiss and 1 week of Open Division playoffs. This is known as Phase 1. Next is Contender Trials, or Phase 2. This phase takes the bottom 4 teams from the 2019 season of Contenders and the top 8 teams from the Open Division and puts them in a single elimination bracket to qualify for Contenders. The top 8 Open Division teams are seeded 5 through 12 respectively, and seeds 1 through 4 will play the winners of those matches. This means that all teams from the 2019 Season 2 of Contenders will stay in Contenders, and will be joined by the 4 teams who win the first round of Contenders Trials. Finally, we get to Contenders, which is Phase 3, and is now comprised of the 4 teams that made it through the initial double elimination bracket from Phase 1, and the top 8 teams from Contenders Trials. The results of Contenders Trials will also decide the advancing team seeding for the first round of Contenders, where they will play against each other for the right to advance to the quarterfinals and face the top 4 teams. This tournament is a single elimination bracket, where the top 4 teams will stay in the next Contenders tournament, while the bottom 8 teams return to Trials. Points will be awarded according to each team's performance, which we'll get to later. Each week, the Contenders on show will alternate between the Atlantic Division and Pacific. After the first round of Contenders, we get Phase 4, which will repeat Phase 2 and 3 for Trials Week 2 and Contenders Week 2. After the second round of Contenders, we go back to the Open Division and repeat Phases 1 through 4. So in the end, one season will have 2 rounds of Open Divisions, 4 rounds of Trials, and 4 rounds of Contenders. Teams will accumulate points based on their performance over the course of the 4 rounds of Contenders, and the top 8 teams with the highest points will advance to the season playoffs, where they will compete in a double elimination bracket to crown a champion. In an interview with Esports, Overwatch Contenders global head Dan McHugh explained that the new changes would allow teams of the same caliber to play each other more frequently, as opposed to the current round-robin format used in Contenders. It also allows more opportunities for Open Division teams to get into Contenders, as well as giving players and coaches more opportunities to be noticed by Overwatch League teams, as they can play more often against Contenders teams and show their worth. McHugh also explained that even though having just 2 weeks of regular Contenders each season, or playing only twice a month, might seem like less games than we're used to, overall, they'll still be playing more matches in 1 year than they had been previously, which theoretically means a higher rate of development. Also, Contenders will begin to look more towards academy teams to develop new players and bring in fresh talent. So a new rule that academy teams cannot drop lower than Contenders Trials will be implemented, allowing them to experiment with their rosters. The last interesting change McHugh mentioned is that the number of two-way players an academy team can field will increase from 2 to 4, which means that more Overwatch League teams will likely try to take advantage of the system to rotate their rosters or give bench players more game time, especially with travel and fatigue being more of a concern in the 2020 season. Now that we more or less understand the new Contenders format, is this really a step forward for the path to pro? Obviously, there are concerns with player and team stability. In theory, you could be relegated from Contenders down to Trials after just one match, when previously you would need to play the entire round robin and lose a significant number of games in Contenders for this to happen. In fact, losing just 2 games in a row could mean a Contenders team dropping down to the Open Division. This also means it may be less palatable for new organizations to invest in Contenders and even for existing organizations to keep their investments, as there could be a lot of fluctuation and uncertainty for your team. However, this effect seems less serious when we think of Trials and Contenders as one tournament with multiple levels. Any team can get knocked out of Contenders into Trials, but any Trials and Open Division team could just as easily make it back to Contenders. Finally, the single elimination system also makes it harder for teams who have had just one bad game to continue playing with other teams at their level. As mentioned earlier, just 2 consecutive losses could put a Contenders team in Trials or Open. This RNG element does introduce a bit of unfairness, as a lot depends on brackets and seeding. However, there are benefits to this new system. Previously, a major problem that we saw in the Trials and Open Division was any team that failed to make it into Contenders would have to disband and allow its players to seek new teams, as the Open Division season would not start for another 6 months, and practicing the whole time without any tournament reps would be pointless. This also meant that Open Division teams were not able to develop themselves and have as much practice as Contenders teams, making it even harder for them to compete in Trials. It also created a lot of uncertainty for players, as they knew that whatever team they were playing for at the time was only temporary and most likely wouldn't last. So it made it harder for players to practice consistently or commit to a single team. This, combined with the lack of third-party tournaments for players to showcase their skills, led to many players quitting and moving on to other games. With this new system, Open Division teams have more frequent tournaments to play in, as Contender seasons are shorter, giving them more opportunities to reach Trials and Contenders. This allows Tier 3 players to also become more involved in the process of the path to pro, and to gain more exposure by facing off against Contenders teams, giving them more opportunities to be noticed and picked up by Academy or Overwatch League teams. Thanks for watching. What do you think of the new Contenders system? Do you think it's better than last season's? Or will this give more players the opportunity to make it to the big times? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This video was brought to you by Insights, a platform to review and coach from the comfort of your own PC. Simply upload, review, and start strategizing, all in real time. See why the pros are using Insights to organize and review their gameplay. Get your free account today.